Video is a little bit later than usual, but there's a ton of sweet things after our fantastic over there update last week. So I wanted to go ahead and cover some of the sweetest new things that are putting up some stats on Untapped and that I've been enjoying, as well as cover the tried and true deck list that have some new bits worked into them. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? Kicking off our shiny and new category, we have a Cerebro 5 variation that has two different buff cards from our last OTA. Rhino is a 2/5 now that still makes a rock at his location, and the Ancient One's Tau spell that copies an ongoing effect now costs you only 2 energy. This allows us to place Cerebro into a path with 2 other cards and copy its effect over to them, turning all of your 5 power things into 14s across the board, which lets Doctor Doom represent 42 points of power spread out for just 6 points of energy. Rhino's Rock not only works well with the Ancient One spell, but it's also food for Merlin to polymorph into some points or to once in future back into your deck to give you some energy on another turn. Merlin also serves as a way for this deck to have some location variant mitigation, letting you re-roll a location that's problematic for our Cerebro bonus, while also conveniently kicking Merlin up to 5 points of power, so he gets to share in with our Cerebro bonus. Wave kind of ties the room together here for us, making it so Sarah and Doctor Doom can be played ahead of Curve. And it's also worth calling out that Martyr and Silk, who have techs that can typically be drawbacks, work very well with the Ancient One's Tau as well, since that spell rewrites the text box, completely getting rid of Martyr's often detrimental drawback. Next up, we have a really innovative take on the Storm Lockout archetype that's leveraging cards from our last couple of over there updates. Storm is obviously back to a more efficient 3 energy card, and we have Rhino here as a 2/5 whose extra rock provides food for Merlin to either be polymorphing or turning into extra energy, so we could do things like Professor Xing ahead of Curve. Speaking of Professor X, he was updated in our most recent patch, making it so he now only locks character cards out of being played into his location, meaning that Merlin's spells can slip on in. This gives us a combo on the last turn of the game where you can play Polymorph from Merlin into the Professor X path, which is going to upgrade our lowest power thing, i.e., almost always Professor X, and turn him into a 6 energy bomb that's often going to have far more than just 2 power. We pair this with other potent 5 energy cards, Claw and Gamora, making it so we can play a 5-drop bomb in one of the locations while also letting Merlin's spell play into wherever Professor X is at. Wrapping things up nicely with a bow, we have Jeff the Baby Land Shark as well as Captain Marvel, who can move cleanly into Professor X's path to provide extra support as well, or work to ensure that Storm's going to lock up her lane if we played her out a little early. Hazmat Silver Surfer featuring Wong as well as Odin as means to go far up over the top of whatever our opponents bringing to the table is a deck that's existed in Marvel Snap for a little while, but this particular build is getting to benefit from a whole host of recent over-the-air updates. Absorbing Man is up to a 5th point of power. Ironheart now only needs 2 cards on the board to be gaining value, and even Hazmat, who is technically nerfed from a 2/2 up to a 3/3, is synergistic in this deck since it's a card that Silver Surfer now gets to add extra stats to after the fact. This deck list is one of the absolute best ways in Marvel Snap to have a really powerful linear game plan, meaning if your opponent is just trying to straight race you with something like Mr. Negative, this deck list is often going to be giving them a run for their money since our Silver Surfer lanes get absolutely huge with Wong and Odin, or Hazmat makes their boards absolutely tiny. Misery gained a point of power in our most recent OTA, which has players playing one of my personal favorite archetypes again, the Misery Thor's deck. We have Beta Ray Bill as well as Thor, whose hammers can be fished up by King Atiri or Jane Foster the Mighty Thor, giving us a really potent final turn of the game where we can play out Firehair, Misery, and Hammers to make our single Thor paths absolutely massive. We round out the details with a few tech cards in Killmonger, Shadow King, and Shang-Chi, making it so we can beat up whatever game plan our opponent is bringing out, while also scaling up our absolutely massive as Guardians. This next deck list is one I would absolutely love to hear from you all in the comments down below if you get a chance to play it, what you think of it. I'm definitely going to have to give it a try on my live stream this week. It's playing not one, not two, but three different cards I recently threw in the Kang tier in our series 4 or 5 tier list, which are Red Wing, Zorn, and Emperor Hulkling. This deck list is playing a mixture of interesting ways to get big fat bombs into play at a reduced cost, while also having that small movement sub theme to enable Red Wing that also makes Vulture large while it slides around the board. You have Blink kind of tying the room together, giving us an additional way to cheat big things into play, and then Shadow King as well as Cosmo give us a little bit of counterplay as well as stopping our opponent from doing something like Shang-Chiing our own big monsters when we get them out early. One of my personal favorites with Misery featuring Victoria Hand and Frigga is putting up some solid stats on the Untapped tracker as well. I think this archetype is a really phenomenal mix of ways to add different points to the board, with Victoria Hand powering up your Hood Demons, Kate Bishop Arrows, and Iron Patriot payoffs, while having a touch of interaction with Shadow King and Juggernaut to mess with your opponent on the last turn of the game. This deck list does a fantastic job of spreading out to play to all three lanes, while also keeping your opponent on their toes thanks to the high cube equity cards like Anti-Venom bring to the table, masking exactly what you're going to be playing and where. If you've taken a fancy to playing with Werewolf by Night inside of Sanctum Showdown and want to try and translate some of that success to the ladder and Conquest, this variation featuring Merlin as well as Agamotto to give you lots of on reveals to dance the dog around the board with some more flexibility, getting it into otherwise completely full paths, looks to be one of the best ways to do that per the stats on the Untapped tracker. I think this deck list is hitting most of the spots that you want to in this metagame. You've got a good spread of stats, most of which duck opposing tech cards like Shang-Chi, while also giving you something like Shadow King to interact with whatever your opponent has going on. And again, I absolutely love the inclusion of a cheeky zero cost card, in this case Yellow Jacket, which can make things like our Void or the Hood even smaller before we send it across with the Nihilist, and it's a free way to jump your Werewolf around the board, giving you a couple extra points and a surprising move that your opponent is likely not going to be accounting for on that final most important turn of the game. Looking at some classic decks that got some new toys and are putting up some promising stats on tap so far, we have a fresh take on Lockjaw discard. Lockjaw is now an activate card that swaps out a card that you play next at any other location. This seems especially potent with Wong. You could play out something like Blade or Colleen or Corvus at its location, and then have Lockjaw swap it into your deck, grabbing either Modok or Khonshu or even Malekith to double up, fishing up cheaper things, including even the cheap one you just put into your deck for Wong to double up at the very end of the game. This deck list has a really neat mix of ways to put points into play between Khonshu, Apocalypse, and Dracula, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying out this modernized version of a classic Marvel Snap archetype thanks to Lockjaw's recent refresh. By the numbers, this classical destroy variation is the most successful Dormammu deck on Untapped. Something that's worth calling out because I've watched a number of my opponents mess it up over the weekend is that in order for Dormammu's first spell to work, you need to make sure there's something actually in your destroy zone. This means if you blow up something like X-23 or Wolverine that regenerates on the board, it's not going to satisfy that condition. So you're going to make sure you're blowing away something like Bucky Barnes, Nico Manaur, or even the Hood if you want to get those rituals going. It's unclear to me from a pure data-driven perspective at this point if Dormammu's actually making the destroy archetype better, or if it's just the naturally best deck where he kind of organically slots into. We'll need more people going back to playing Dormammu-less builds versus this one to have some samples to compare as the format matures and he's no longer just the shiny new thing that people are shoving everywhere. Move Bounce is a pretty classic Marvel Snap archetype at this point, and it was putting up some solid stats on the Untapped tracker after our most recent OTA, so I wanted to go ahead and include it in here for any move aficionados who might be out there. I think this deck list is pretty pure distilled Marvel Snap. If you enjoy thinking through your turns meticulously and getting punished for every misplay, this is an excellent deck for doing that. It's also one that'll give you good pacing of figure out how you're going to dodge varying tech cards, whether it's throwing priority quickly with a slick movement or making sure you bounce things back to your hand at opportune points. Speaking of all of the tech cards, last and certainly least interesting, Galacta may be down, but she's not out. The Zabu Surge tech card Mush amalgamation is still putting up really solid stats on untap, which is a testament to the fact that Galacta really probably should have been nerfed long ago. If they could take a whole point off of the bonus that she's giving, and she's still doing really solid numbers. Looking through all the metrics on Untapped, it feels like this over-the-air update is living up to the hype. There's so many sweet things to be trying. If you want to see a bunch of these in action over the course of next week, be sure to check out the link to my daily deck highlights channel for Marvel Snap in the video description down below. Speaking of links that are down there, make sure to check out one of my wonderful longtime sponsors, Into the AM, as well. They make awesome premium clothing and a fantastic selection of graphic t-shirts that you always see me wearing. It's a fantastic way to support my content while also picking up something sweet. They got an extra sale going on their website now through July 7th for the 4th of July holiday. Here in the United States, you can use my code HOGLANDY to save a little bit extra on top of that. As always, I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of the video. Smash the like button if you enjoyed my roundup this week, and I hope your next snap pack is an excellent one.